Welcome back to another really special little episode for these DM clinics. I'm with my very good friend and colleague Jeff Brooks, who I've known almost my whole career and have looked up to for almost my whole career. The writer of many amazing books, which you should check out. And Jeff and I are going to spend some time talking about offers. I do one of my little clinics is about offers because it's such an important topic. And I know, as ongoing learners and practitioners, we are always trying to find better ways to express these things. So for ourselves and for our colleagues. So Jeff, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, great to be here.
Good. So let's go for it. Tell me what you got. What
Yes.
do you think?
Okay.
You've been investigating this. I've been watching your blogs and I see the offering plate come up in my inbox. So I know
Yes.
you're playing with how to do
Yes.
this better.
I'm in the midst of a series about offers. It's going to go for a few more weeks.
Okay.
Tuesdays. Be there on Tuesdays and you'll see. Um, yeah. Okay. In my latest thinking, I've spent like decades trying to talk to sort of create a framework for what a fundraising offer is. And it's always kind of been a little bit too complex. uh at one point I had like there were the seven things that your offer needs to include, and for a while I was on four things, and I think like even that's a little bit. I mean, it's all good details, but it's not really a high level way of looking at what we're doing. So I've got one now. Maybe this is the one, which is when people say what's a fundraising offer, I tell them what it is, and it's three things. It is a problem. It is the solution to that problem, and it is an invitation to become part of that solution. I think that's it. Because you can just ask yourself when you're thinking about your call to action, your offer for your donors, are you doing those three things? And you'd be surprised how often you really look and go, whoops, we left out the solution, or we left out the problem, or we aren't inviting anybody.
Mhm.
So I think that's maybe the answer. And if all of you practicing fundraisers put that framework on your offer, and you got to do this like before you do anything else in your project. Don't
Agreed.
just start writing a letter. Do this first. Where are we going with this? What's the offer? What is the problem? What is its solution? How are we going to invite people to join? So I don't know. What do you think, John?
That's, I think that's really good. In you and I both do a lot of coaching for clients, and often, people bring me just their letter. For some reason, all I get is just a letter.
Yeah.
I always like to know where everything else is. And I get letters that have often really good stories or a pretty good story, but I'm like, you can't, the story is there to support the offer, the thing you're asking me for. It's just an emotional carrier of what you want me to do and why you're asking me to do it. But it's not you don't start a story, but you and I both go to conferences called storytelling where they're told story,
Yeah.
story, story is all the thing. And I'm like, story isn't the thing. If you have a really good offer, in other words, like you just said, a really good problem that you can articulate, and the
Yeah.
solution as I can be a part of it, and how I can, like you said, an invite to help with that solution. That's in some cases all you really need. You don't
Yeah.
really need the story. That's a bit contentious. Jen Love, my beautiful
Yeah.
business partner, gets up in my face about that because she's a storyteller. You're a storyteller. But
Yeah.
actually, an offer is a bit boring, isn't
Yeah. Well, it can be, and it often is in real
it?
life. And that's a good point. The stories actually are kind of magic, but not all stories do the job. And they can be great stories and still not do the job. So maybe my way of thinking about stories is that, yeah, we tell these stories, like these stories about other people within our fundraising. And we need to, we got to do that. But that's not the story. It's a story. The story is the donor's story.
Mhm.
And that story isn't just self-contained in this letter we write. The letter has just part of it. And the letter leads them up to, you know how stories have the story arc, which is a rising action, climax, and resolution,
Mhm.
right? That's what stories are. The donor story, the starts in this, you know, this letter, this email we send them. That's the rising action. Look what's going on. Here's this problem. What's going to go on here? What's the solution? And right at that moment, the top of the action, we hand it over to the donor. The donor decides what's going to happen. So in other words, it leaves our control and goes into their control. And the story either just stops there because they decide not to give, which they have every right to do. I mean, they have every right not to pay attention to us, not to give, or to pay attention and decide not to do it. And then it's over. But some of them give, and the story continues. And hopefully we write back to them, we thank them, and then we send them a newsletter that says, look what happened. And that's the rest of that curve. So it happens out in the world, and mainly in the donor's life, but we are participating. So,
Yeah.
you know, when we tell the story of a you know, a homeless child who's hungry and is not doing well at school, you know, those things we do, those are stories are very important, and they kind of have a little bit of a story arc in them, but they're not the real thing. We've got to lead to a call to action. So there may be that story, the classic story, that's the problem. That's like a really good way of talking about the problem, but it's not the whole thing. And then solution, we just kind of leave the solution to the donor. So I think if you can think of it that way and sort of maybe get out of the idea that, hey, if I just tell a really cool story, everybody's going to give. Because that's not true. It could be the best story in the world. You could be the best writing. The design could just pop in every possible way, but it doesn't actually take them someplace.
Yes. Yeah, it's important. There's a couple of things. I don't want to derail the offer conversation, but again, it's a little nuance, a storytelling nuance I see between American fundraising and Canadian fundraising. I can't speak internationally so much because I think they kind of move between both a little bit. Mostly the American examples I always see is what you just described, which is here's the problem, here's potentially a solution, but we don't know how this is going to go until some other time.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in Canadian fundraising, because we're so nice, I guess, often we're like, here's a problem that happened. Here's how, we have fixed this problem previously or because of you and your support. And let's make sure you're giving to make sure this doesn't happen again. Or if it happens again, we can make sure that they're helped too. This is a very like kind of more gentle way of doing it. So it's just like a little nuance in storytelling. And our fundraising obviously works very, very well. It's not like one is better than the other. But I find typically with American fundraising, and I know with your work too, it's sort of like here's a situation of something that happened that didn't, but we don't really know how it went. And the donor's giving a check not knowing how this is going to go. And so like and back to the offer conversation, like I heard Sean Triner express this like years and years and years and years ago, and I share it all the time in my presentations. The most classic offer is give us $7 an hour, the dog gets it.
Yeah.
Because it does what you just said. It basically
Right.
tells you what the problem is, how it can be a part of the solution. It's an invite to help be a part of the solution, right?
Yeah.
And obviously
Right.
it has some urgency, which you and I both need. You also can use and stuff. And it's just a classic expression, and it always gets lots of tee-hees at conferences. But I'm like, but
Yeah.
you need to know what is your dog, and how much do I need to give so it doesn't get it. You need to express these things. So
Yeah.
it's not a joke. You need to actually have this expressed in some capacity in your appeals.
Yeah. That does have that has problem, solution, and invitation. Um, and if you think about it, our instinct very often will give us that three-part approach, even if we've never thought of it before. But I think we are also led astray. To sort of take your Canadian example, a lot of people take it three more steps farther on, which is look at all the amazing stuff we're doing, giving so we can give now and we can keep doing that. That's not problem, solution, invitation. It's sort of maybe it's solution invitation, but there's not a sense that you actually need me to join in and help solve a problem. And to me, that's a huge mistake,
Mhm.
and it doesn't work that well. I mean, it kind of works because there's certain donors who are sort of there already,
Yeah.
and they might be. It's like those donors who give to newsletters, right? Because newsletters are all about solved problems, and there are tons of donors who give more to newsletters than to appeals. So there are people who are kind of they're kind of past the problem. They know it's there, but they're way more focused on the solution. But most donors, especially newer donors, non-donors that you're trying to win over, you've got to have a compelling problem, or you're not going anywhere.
It's probably the hardest part of this work. I mean, you and I both have
Yeah.
worked with organizations say, well, I can't say like that I can't articulate really what the problem is necessarily because it's too complex. Or how can I possibly say $50 is going to do anything? Like
Right.
because I don't it doesn't we don't work like that usually is what they say. And I'm like, well, you do, you just have to do, you have to do more hard work. Like how do you when you have clients like that come to you with that kind of like frustration, like, well, I'm a hospital foundation. How can I possibly
Yeah.
express this in a simplistic manner that you and I are suggesting? I don't know what kind of advice you usually give.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I mean, and that's worth knowing if that's where you are. And a lot of times you aren't there. Now you said a hospital foundation. A hospital foundation is definitely there. You do not want to be saying, pay for one glass beaker for research, $1,200. You know, that's a really lousy offer.
Mhm.
But because you're sort of looking at it the wrong way. Now, if you are a homeless shelter, you're talking about meals that are $2 each. That's what you need to be talking about is these really small, discrete pieces of the problem and solution, right? People are hungry. A meal will help solve that problem. Will you give? So it's really easy when it's that. But if you are when you can't break it down in some cases. But I think a lot of people force themselves into thinking, well, everything we do is complicated because it is. Even the homeless shelter that's feeding people, the work they do is enormously complicated
Mhm.
because they're not just passing out food. They're actually trying to help people, get off the streets and change their lives. That's about probably more complicated than surgery in a hospital, if you really think about it.
Mhm.
But but they at least have this advantage where they can say, let's focus on one piece of what we do. If it's the hospital, you have to like think bigger. Okay, what's important here? Well, we want our community to be healthy. I want to pay back for the great care I got. And that's actually one of the strongest motivations for donors to hospitals is that they're grateful patients, right? And in that case, you're not talking about, what does a gallbladder surgery cost? Well, you don't want to go there. It's crazy expensive, especially here in the US. Um, and it's kind of beside the point. The point is, wow, they did a great thing for me. I want to pay that back. I want to pay it forward. And so we don't talk about what does little things cost because
Mhm.
in healthcare, nothing's a little thing.
It's true.
Um,
Yeah, it's true.
Believe me, I had surgery last year and I got the bills. Okay, this is American healthcare system. So you get these insane bills and you can't believe what like a little plastic tube costs. Yeah,
Right. So it's not the things you want to focus on. I get it.
not at all. Right.
You had some reply forms you wanted to share with us. Do you want to do that and talk through
Yeah,
it?
let's look at some
Yeah.
and then maybe let's see what we see there. Okay. Okay, you're gonna see sort of the wrong thing for a minute there.
Or the right
Yeah.
thing. That's cool.
Oh yeah, I've got a really never mind. I got a cool idea. Um, so let me call up some. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, I just have a big pile of reply devices we can be looking at here. Um, so here's one. Speaking of homeless shelters, this is a homeless shelter in Seattle. And this is their Thanksgiving appeal, which does phenomenally well year after year for decades. Um, so let's ask ourselves, okay, and there's obviously this is part of a direct mail kit. There's a lot of other stuff. There's a letter, there's a lift piece, there's all kinds of things going on here. But we're going to just look at this one. This is sort of the active ingredient of whether the donor is going to give. So what's the problem when we look at this?
Are you asking me, or are you just?
I'm going to ask you. I'm
Obviously,
asking everybody, but we can't hear them.
obviously, the problem is that the shelter needs more food to feed the people who are coming there to get it.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. And what's the solution?
Obviously, that well, there's lots of solutions, but obviously, me giving a certain amount will make sure I can provide so many meals.
Yeah. Yeah. And to really focus in,
Yeah,
$1.92 provides a meal. So that's at its most elemental level. $1.92 solves the people here in town are hungry. And the invitation is give. And you can see here, they've made it fit. This is Uncle Maynard. If you don't know, he's
yes.
he's an uncle who is a really good donor and gives me his junk mail. They've asked him to give $125 to feed 66 people, or $156.25 to feed 82 people. So we know a little bit about Uncle Maynard's giving patterns. It's somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
So we know he can do that. We know he's done it before, so he's likely to do it again. And that's our invitation. Uncle Maynard, give somewhere, $125, $156 or so, more or less, whatever you want to do. And that helps solve the problem. And it's kind of worth noting here that you can see the red copy below the photo. Each $1.92 provides a meal that can be someone's first step to getting off the streets for good. So what we're doing is we're trying to make it as big as possible. It's not just a meal. And that's literally kind of how these programs work, is people come in to solve their immediate problem, which is they're hungry. And then some of them, they stay and they deal with the root causes that are causing them to be homeless in the first place. So it's not just a meal, it's more than a meal. So there it is. We have a problem, a solution, and an invitation. I want to look at one that's more complex. Here's a hospital, Children's Hospital. And I don't know if you can see that very well. I have to lean close to see it well enough. It's a children's hospital in Sydney, Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see here, we don't have a simple little, $1.92 here. Yes, Jane, I'll help give you and other sick children the treatment you need to get better. It's interesting, we're talking to a child, not to the signer of the letter. And this donor, it's Mr. Sean Triner, is being asked to give $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000.
Yes.
And it's not to do something specific, it's to help sick children like Jane. So we can see the problem, right? It's children are sick. And in this case, it's an easy problem to describe and to understand, right? You don't need details. You don't need to tell them anything. They just know. And the amounts are probably based on what the donor's done before, and doesn't go into detail, but it invites people to come in and help change the life of a sick child. Let's see, I'm going to find, oh, here's a good one. This is a fun drive. This is a funny one. This was an acquisition control for a long time. So it's got a lot going on, but everything is tested in this one. Every dollar ships $1,075 in vaccines and medicine. So this is an organization that takes gifts in kind, medical gifts in kind, and ships them out to poverty areas that are underserved medically. And so that's the whole thing. And you can see that what's kind of starring here is that leverage to the donor's giving. So if they give 15 bucks, that's $16,000 worth of.
And you've talked about that too, right? Like the sort of believability of like gift matching. I think you usually talk about it in terms of your gift will be multiplied 100 times versus 3 times or doubled. You've
Yeah.
investigated some of that space. I've never seen one quite this high though. This is bonkers.
Well, here's the rest of the story.
Yeah.
We tested later, what if we put a matching grant on top of this?
Oh my God.
So a dollar ships $1,000 worth of stuff, but we're going to double your gift in the first place. So that shipping amount doubles, $2,150 worth. And I bet, we often, I would do, I don't know if you do this, but when you do a test, you sort of bet, I think A or B
Of
is going to
course.
win.
Yeah, of course.
I thought A, which is the way it is now, was going to beat that one where it doubles. Nope. Doubling this and actually adding a little bit of complexity. So it's shipping and match
I mean, how do you
resoundingly won.
but the breakdown
So
of that is just like, I mean, against the okay. I'd love to see that one too if you stumble across it. Because I'm just like, how do you even represent this? We talk about again the emotion and logic in fundraising, right? It's the emotional component that makes us give. It's a logic that maybe, yes, it plays a role sometimes in our decision making, but it's the emotional component that drives us. And so, like, I try to steer people away from too much logic, like
yeah,
getting into too like spending all the time in that part of my brain because it's not the part that moves me to give. But in a case like this or the one you just described, there's a lot of logic I'm looking at here.
yeah,
There's a lot of like mental math that I'm doing,
yeah.
but it's still leveraging the emotional component of like my little thing is gonna be a much bigger thing, I guess. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
really
And
weird.
and that's you have to bury the complexity. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've learned about this kind of offer is you you're very, especially when you're doing it at first for the first time, it's like you're very aware of how complex this whole thing is. And you spend a lot of time describing how it works and why, and it gets better and better as you whittle down the complexity. All that's left of the complexity is the math.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
all it is. We don't really talk about it. We
Get
say we
into
have
the
these supplies. So the problem, I mean, you can see what the problem here is. There's people without proper medical care, and the story in the letter was, it's about a family that's in dire straits from, a disease, but they can't get the health care they need because there's none available where they live. Problem solution. We have a warehouse full of medicines that would solve the problem,
yeah.
but we need to help ship it. All it takes is $1 to ship $1,000 worth of this stuff. So that's
It-
kind of what you learn.
yeah. It's a great offer. When you break it down, it's a great freaking offer.
Yeah, yeah. Just and it works and works and works. And it might be worth reminding people that this is some of the best fundraising you can do. Anytime the donor gets some kind of leverage
Yeah.
to their giving, things are going to go way better. You're going to raise a ton more money.
Yeah. Tom Ahern's always said that donors love a good deal.
Yep.
We all love a
Yeah.
good deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's sort of two good deals. That one is like a meal, $1.92 meal. Well, that's a really cheap meal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's a bargain.
Yeah.
The other one is multiplying their gift in some way. And sometimes you can combine those two together.
Mhm.
Just don't let the complexity suck you in.
Yeah. That's the key part is yeah, don't get too far down into the logic of it. Show the math. Get out of the way. Let them make the
Yeah.
decision to do it.
Showing the math is super important
Yeah.
because they can't do this math. The funny thing is, in fact, I got another one coming up, is even when the math is super easy, like your gift is doubled by matching funds, anybody can do doubling math, 15, 30, anybody can do that. But you still got to do the math for them when you want to show leverage. Let me show you the next one. This is a matching gift. And this one's a not so great example. You can see it's from quite a while ago. I want to double my gift dollar for dollar to empower people to protect themselves from malaria. So we do have problem and solution here. And we do have invitation, but it didn't quite connect, did it? And I think the problem is a little bit with the writing there.
Mm.
I want to double my gift doesn't that sound like I want to give twice as much?
Yes, maybe.
It's a little bit ambiguous. That's not what it means, but
Yeah,
it does sort of seem like that. And you have to remember, a lot of donors are seeing this and they didn't read the letter, right?
correct. Yeah.
So the letter does a better job of sort of saying it the right way. But here it's kind of skipped over a little bit. I think also I can't decide whether that $50 equals $100, whether that's like elegant or messed up. And I think it's a little bit messed up because I don't know that it's quite evident that that equal sign does the same thing as the words $50 will become $100.
Yeah, and I try to
Um,
use that. I'll try to use that will become or becomes sort of so it's more evident that that actually it's being doubled. And same with formatting. I usually add like a bolding onto the second amount, like
yeah,
just little
yeah,
things. But I do agree the language. One other thing you and I talked about just before we started recording was that I will versus I want. And I was sharing my business
yeah,
my partner Rachel used to work with Harvey McKinnon, and Harvey always taught her, like I will is an action. So I will double my gift amount is different than I want. I want an
mhm.
intention. And so again, here this is very a little more passive. Yes, I want to do this. I think maybe it's later if I get a chance. Versus I will.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like on this right now. Like and it's a little language nuance, which exist all over the place, as you and I both know in this work.
yeah,
But these little
yeah,
words can make a difference in terms of what I do or how my brain and heart feel about what I want to do or will do.
yeah. I think I want to is what almost everybody says. And I
Sure.
and I wonder if that's just a habit. We do that because we've always done it, and because most reply devices say it that way. Yeah,
Yeah, but the
it's
other
in,
ones were more, they were like I'll, so they were I wills. But this is the like,
this one's I want to.
yes, I want. The one before was I'll,
I'll help give. So
I
that
will
that's
help.
more like you're saying. Yeah,
Yes. And I think
yeah.
the one before also was an I'll help, which is
I'll help buy
yeah.
food. Yep, yep.
So again, you can be more explicit. The contractions are pretty good. There's a contraction, right? Is that the right word? Yeah. And spell it
Yes.
out more. But anyways, it's just one of those little things we would talk about for 2 hours in a bar at a conference, but we won't bore people with here today.
Yeah. I, it'd be interesting. That's one of those things that I think if you tested it, you wouldn't see a big delta between the two. We might, but if you weren't mailing many millions, you probably wouldn't get it statistically significant because it's such a small thing.
Mhm,
Um, I think though that those little things all work together
mhm.
and they create a sort of a gestalt. So, and I have a little bit of evidence for this, and this is something from Sean, our friend Sean Triner. He had a client some years ago who was kind of skeptical of sort of these techniquey things we do in fundraising, like underlining and it was just like it had a whole list of things that they didn't quite believe. So they did, and they had a large quantity for testing. So they did several tests where they isolated these little things and tested just that.
Okay.
And then they did a big test where they were all there
Yeah.
versus all not there.
Yeah.
What happened was in those ones where we tested just, I want because I will, things like that, they got no statistical difference per on each one of those tests. They were too small to move the needle. But the one where they were all together won big time.
Mhm. Did you just freeze, Jeff? I'm gonna keep talking because I know Jeff. This is my opportunity to actually talk since Jeff is frozen, which is brilliant. Um, and I'm recording anyways.
You should do
Oh,
that.
there it is. Oh, you're back. I was gonna start talking because you were frozen, so I was like, "This now's my
Ah,
opportunity to take the mic." I was gonna say, like, so like Steven Screen calls it tactic stacking, and I'm
yeah,
always thinking
yeah.
about because I'm a big fan of the little things you can easily dismiss, like the I will, I want. It's an easily dismissible thing,
Mhm.
or like whatever, a photograph near a signature on the back of a letter. by themselves would make no statistical difference. But what you're trying to do is stack as many of the most appropriate tactics as you can from the outer envelope in. Things like handwriting, things like stamps on an angle, things like using a paper clip, things like that by themselves wouldn't probably make much difference. But when you put them all together, they actually do make a big difference. And so I'm a big fan of understanding and learning more about these little nuances because again, added together,
Yeah.
they do dramatically change things. By themselves are dismissible. They don't seem like how could that possibly make a difference? So again, it's part of that nerdy obsession of like how many things can I put in this pack because they're the right things. It's not about just dumping whatever you can think of. It's what's
Right.
appropriate in this
Right.
pack, that makes sense. So yes, I do like that point.
Yeah. There's one more.
Okay.
This is a trails organization in Connecticut. The letter signer is a turtle. And there's a match. This is, yes, I want, this one's I want, to help save the wood turtle, keep our Connecticut forests healthy and alive. Please use my donation to protect the habitat we love. Now, it's worth noting here, this is a full page reply device instead of a coupon. And I got to say, you want to do better right away, easily, do a full page instead of a coupon. Test it. That's one of those tests that will likely show a difference if you do it.
Yeah.
I think we do those coupons, this guy or this guy, we do those because it's cheap.
Mhm.
And we used to be really focused on cheap. We're kind of learning in recent days as prices have gone up so high for production and postage and everything that being as cheap as possible isn't where you win. You win by making more money. And so I'm more often have the budget to do bigger packs, full page reply to things like that. And it's almost always working. I don't want to give you the idea that a coupon is a big fail. You're doing, you're doing bad work if you do it. It's not. No, they work, but this will usually work better.
Yeah, it has been, and so I do talk about this, and in fact, this little thing we're doing will go somewhere in around my session around the same sort of coupons or offers because I think I do both, because it has been tested a lot, and so like our colleagues in the UK and Australia have tested so much that just like here at Agents of Good, this is our go-to positioning for reply form almost always. Again, if you're doing a reminder or something, there is a place where again a simple coupon is perfect. You don't have to spend a little bit extra. But more often, again, in testing, this will do better for you than a smaller slip one. But again, there's lots of even this coupon I'm looking at reply form. There's things to unpack all over the place. However, we were here to talk about offers today, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's been pretty well articulated, Jeff. Thank you for that. Unless you have something else to share, I'll just wrap it up.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anyways, that's it. That's it. That's our little discussion or longer discussion about offers, of which again we'll be talking more about it in these clinics. And Jeff, I really, as always, appreciate the time and thank you for your brain and your knowledge and your passion.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank everybody who's here.
Yes, of
I'm
course.
glad you're
Always.
watching, and I hope you go out there with problem, solution, and invitation.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay.
All right, bye-bye.